Are we actually on?
It says live. I can't see anything though.
Check on the phone.
If I could hear that.
I can hear us, but there's no video.
Oh, okay. Let's try to see here. All right, for anyone that might be on right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get my. You need to turn it off, babe. Sorry, my husband's got my video on too. All right, for anyone who's listening right now, we're trying to get it figured out how to turn it on. But if you can hear me, go ahead and type in the comment section and let me know you're there. I see that there's 2 people in. So if you could comment, that would be great. What is the puppy doing? Up like it's on. Oh, there we go. Yay! We're on.
I'll check on the door. Hey, put that doll down. You want to come in with us? Come here.
This is the newest addition to our family. This is Esther. Oh, well, she disappeared, but she's laying down now. We got a new puppy, Esther. We're going to be on and go talking in just a little bit. We're going to wait a couple more minutes for more people to get on, but we'll be starting soon. All right, for those of you who are watching, if you could just type in the comment section.
If you have any questions as we go through, I'm sure other people will answer people's questions and stuff. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, if you could do it in all caps, it just makes it easier and makes it pop out to us more. And it's just makes the whole thing go smoother.
Hey, we got more people on. Okay. We're going to get started in about 1 minute or so. So that way we can wait for a few more people to pop on and see if anybody has additional questions. And we'll go from there. For those of you watching, I hope you're having a great day. Like my husband said, if you have any questions, let us know. We did get some questions ahead of time from individuals who posted on my on previous videos. So if you do see me looking down, it's me referencing the questions that we've already been asked and that we're going to be answering to begin with. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. That way, those of you who are watching can go ahead and start getting the information you're wanting. Like I said, if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the chat. We'd also love to hear where you're watching from. So if you can type in the comments where you're watching from, not specific like locations, but states, that'd be awesome. So we can kind of find out where y'all are from. So my name, I'm Muck Boots and Motherhood. I'm the person you see on the screen all the time. This is my husband. He has a YouTube channel that he's not very active on, but he has one called Cracker Turned Torah. This little puppy that you see popping their head up occasionally, this is our new puppy, Esther. She is a Great Pyrenees Anatolian Shepherd mix, and we'll be training her with our sheep. We do have one Great Pyrenees already. That's 8 years old. So he'll be helping train her with our sheep and other animals that we have. So just a little bit of background about us and where we've been coming from. We are in, we basically sold everything we owned. We were living in Florida, sold everything we owned and moved here to the Ozarks. And so it's been a really fun ride. We've got 40 acres that we're living on right now. And to kind of give you a background, because it's one of the questions is about how do you prioritize what you're doing. We came onto this property and there was no real like buildings. There's no buildings on the property whatsoever. It did already have a power line run to one part of the property, but it was not connected. And it did have a water line across the street, but also was not connected. So while there was some like basic infrastructure in, nothing was set in place yet. And in the way of like driveways and everything like that, everything was just dirt. This property was originally used for cattle. And so that's what it's been used for God knows how many years. But that's what we're on right now. And so when it came to prioritizing, the question that specifically was asked of me was, what's your order of priority for building out your property? For us, we really just had to start with the basics. Like we had to get some rock in the driveway. We had to get, we have a creek going across our property that has basically cuts across the driveway and had completely washed out the driveway. And so we actually needed that to build a bridge before we could even get to the back 30 acres of our property. So there was a lot of basic infrastructure that went into us actually building out our property. But when it comes to prioritizing actually building out a property and working on it, I think my husband will be really good at kind of talking about that because he's definitely the animals man. He kind of helps manage that stuff a little bit more. And I'm like more of his assistant / taking care of stuff more specifically with like house and home kind of work.
So yeah, basically when we got on the property, like she said, no structures. There was like an old barn. We actually did have some friends come over and help tear that down, and we're repurposing some of the materials on it. It just wasn't in a good spot. So we didn't really have a use for it. So I went ahead and tore it down. And like she was saying, literally it was just used for cattle for the last 20 years. Whole property isn't even fenced. So we basically are just getting access and focusing on that. Like here in Oklahoma, we learned that it's not like Florida or after it rains, all the rain just goes into the ground through the sand. No, there is a mud season, basically is what they call it around here. So if we get really, really heavy rains, which is common, our driveway turns to mush. So number one priority is the driveway, getting rock. And that's, been a slower process because rock does cost a lot of money. And when your driveway's 400-500 yards long, it takes a lot of rock. So that's what we're working on right now. And also, like she was saying, the creek was washed out. So we had to build a bridge. Eventually, we're going to put in a better bridge because right now getting across that bridge with like our RV is pretty sketchy. And so we're going to put one in that's more permanent and getting more of the property fenced in for animals. Right now, it's just our pasture.
One of the first things we actually did when we came on the property, because the pasture was fenced in, and this is something that I've talked about in videos before, is you have to think about how you're going to keep your animals safe and even you safe. Because if you're, say you buy a property that's out in the woods, hey, guys, there's coyotes, depending on where you live. I mean, there's coyotes, there could be wolves, bears, whatever part of the country you're in. but you have to start thinking about like, how am I going to protect my family or myself? Like if you're out there by yourself and things like that. And so while we did have 5-strand barbed wire fencing going around the entire 20-acre pasture portion of our property, the back 20 acres that's woods is not pasture, is not fenced in at all. So before we actually even moved onto the property, my husband and I came up here one time for a work week, basically, and we put in electric fencing around 10 acres of the 20-acre part of the property that we're actually going to be like living on right now, and did electric fencing because the electric fencing is really, really good at keeping out like predators and stuff like that. Because dog gets shocked, like a coyote gets shocked once from that fence, they're going to learn they don't want to go through that. So that's something that I think one of the first things that needs to be thought about when you're looking at a homestead is trying to get in that basic infrastructure for protecting you and your animals, especially like even if you don't have any animals yet, but you want chickens or cows or whatever, goats, sheep. Especially with the smaller livestock, they can be very susceptible to predators. So you need to think about, how am I going to protect my animals when I do get them, or if you already do have them, how to, move forward with that process.
Well, and a lot of people have asked us, why haven't we worked on putting in a permanent house and all this other stuff in a barn? It's a good idea not to rush things, because if you just, you jump in.
Hey, Lucia.
You can see it. If you just jump in and you're like, all right, we're going to put a house here. Well, those are permanent structures. They're, kind of hard to move. And it's a good idea to actually stay on a property for, if you can swing it, like you're in an RV, for a year, see the whole property through all the seasons and everything, and get a feel for it so that you don't make a big error. And this dog is just,
if you hear like a sniffing sound,
that's the puppy.
It's the puppy.
There's certain areas of this property we didn't realize how wet they were until we got tons and tons of rain, and it's like, all right, well, yeah, we probably shouldn't put stuff there. And
cool.
So that's kind of, we're not in a rush for the permanent stuff. We're focusing on fencing and infrastructure for animals and roads and stuff for us.
Yeah.
And just learning the property.
And that goes even too with the fact, like, even if you do have a house that you are living in, like the property already has a house on it, but it doesn't have any barns or greenhouses or anything yet, that's still something that you should be waiting on, potentially that 1 year mark, to see, where the water runs and everything like that. I mean, we've had friends that have built houses before, and they realized where they built their house, they had to literally dig trenches and everything else to bypass water because it was so wet where they actually chose to build their home. So it's one of those things, even if you have a house on property, you need to make sure that you're looking at, the other places that, if you want a barn or shed or anything like that. Tiny home. Yeah, it's definitely movable. That's awesome. Next spring we'll have been on this property. May will be 1 year that we've been on this property. So we're celebrating our 6-month anniversary right now on the property. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where after we've seen like spring, there you go, there's the puppy. After you've seen spring, summer, winter, fall, and even with fall, depending on where you live and you have snow and you have runoff and things like that, you'll be able to see there where you're going to be having any runoff from the snow or anything like that. So first thing we would say is, first thing you should be doing is your basic infrastructure of fencing and that kind of perimeter protection and things like that. If you do want to have livestock and everything, we definitely suggest having livestock guardian dogs. We've had sheep since 2014, and half the flock actually came up with us to Oklahoma. And we've had livestock guardian dogs probably about halfway through. And the reason we actually even got livestock guardian dogs is we've never lost a sheep to predators because we've always had the electric fencing up. But we started losing chickens to aerial predators, and we never lost any chickens to ground predators either. Living in Florida, we started having bald eagles actually coming down and our property in Florida and swooping in and literally picking our chickens up, full-grown chickens, up off the ground and flying away with them because our chickens were free range. So we realized we needed to get livestock guardian dogs. So we got Great Pyrenees. And that's one thing. If you are thinking about getting livestock, you should also not only be thinking about getting a fence put in, but also potentially dogs, because fences unfortunately don't protect against the aerial predators. But okay, let's see. Next question that I got for building out property. let's see, some more specific things were like septic system. Maybe I'll let you touch on that one.
It's just what we've chosen to do. We're actually, some people think we're nuts for this, but we're actually not planning on doing a septic system. We have been using composting toilets for going on half a year for now, and we don't mind it. Just the whole bucket and peat moss method, and then it just makes good compost. So that's what we're doing, and then plus, around here with codes and stuff, we don't actually have to have a septic system. So
there are no codes here.
Yeah, we have that freedom. So we're going to use it. And if you do a septic, I mean, those things cost like $10,000 depending on where you are and also what environment. There's rock right below us, so it's kind of problematic. And yeah, it's just we're just going the natural way, and that's what we're going to do. So I mean, we can always add it later on in the future if we want to, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah. With one question too is about we currently actually out here, it's kind of interesting because when we were looking at property out here, there's a lot of listings that we saw that said rural water. And it's basically like, so we came from a city area in Florida, and it was basically it's like city water. It's where it's just piped in. And so we have rural water out at our road, which is now connected onto our property, but it's just, a quarter mile down the driveway. So we don't really plan on putting a well in anytime soon. We would probably prefer that over having rural water because it's probably a lot fresher than, city-ish type water. We don't like the fluoride and chlorine and stuff like that. But right now, while it's not connected, we do have the rural water basically on property. But again, that's something you have to think about depending on the area you're moving to. If they do have rural water, like at the property line or already on property, that's absolutely something you can use. And again, wells do cost a lot of money. So for the most part right now, actually what we've been doing is water catchment. We have now 4 IBCs. We have 4 IBCs, which is
330 gallons.
Yeah.
Each.
So very large IBCs that we've been doing water catchment with, as well as rain barrels. We did start off with rain barrels though, because they were easier to get a hold of at the time. But we've been doing a lot of rainwater catchment, which is basically what we've been using for all our water that we've had here on property for the time being. We also do have, when we bought the property had 4 ponds and 3 creeks?
Yes.
3 creeks on it. So we actually, when I was doing like watering our garden or anything like that, I was just using water from the ponds to water our garden. We do have a 5th pond now, though, that our neighbor so graciously dug for us with his big equipment. That will help collect more rainwater in a different area that had a lot of runoff. So using the water that's already on property and then also doing rainwater catchment has been our main way because we basically have been off grid the entire time we've been here. We actually only got hooked up to power like 3 weeks ago, I want to say.
Yeah, close to a month or something.
Yeah, because basically now that we're hitting winter time, our goal in the future is to be on solar. But considering we're kind of at the point now where it's starting to get really cold, it's not really cold. It'll eventually get really cold. We didn't want to necessarily just trust generator heat for if it gets into the negatives. So that's something that we did choose to get hooked up to, at least for the time being, is the electricity that was on property when we bought it.
And one thing I'll say on the electrical is that we already had a power pole and everything to where we are currently in the camper. We ended up actually, that's one of I'd say our mistakes is that we kind of pushed that back because we had multiple generators and we could just run the generator, we want to be off grid and everything, which I do still like the off grid thing, but the being hooked in, it's a lot cheaper. I mean,
it's like $400 a month.
People don't really add up how much gas, and we have a Honda. It's, fuel efficient and everything, but if you're running it a lot because of the summer heat and all that kind of stuff, it adds up a lot, and oil and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, we probably honestly would have more rock in our driveway right now if we would have just buckled down and got all the electrical wired up and all the fuses and panels and all that stuff done. Yeah, so that's one mistake we definitely
there's we're definitely not like we've definitely made some mistakes here and there for sure, and we'll continue to, because this is starting from this point, it's new to us. While we've homesteaded since 2014, this is new, the whole having nothing. Okay, so we were asked about an RV garage cover. basically it's one of those things like my husband was talking about earlier is we don't want to put any permanent structures really on the property until we know what we actually want to do with the property. Also, where we're at right now is part of the pasture land. And while they had like basically they raised up this area and made it like a flat pad type area, just earthwise for a mobile home, which was their original intention for the people who previously owned this property. So it is like a house spot. It's not where we are planning to build our house. And so this is probably the place where we will build like a, basically like you said, Lucia, a tiny home kind of deal. So we don't want to put in an RV cover right now when we plan on at least building like our first little cabin, which will eventually turn into like a mother-in-law suite kind of thing. But that's not something that we're really worried about. Also, again, our neighbor, you've probably heard him mention a few times in our in my videos in the past. This guy's literally been a godsend. He actually used his really nice Kubota tractor to park our RV. So our RV is like really nicely under some trees and has cover and shade. And I do highly suggest that if you do buy property and you have tree cover, we initially were like, oh, it's no big deal. It's Oklahoma. It's not going to be hot as Florida. Oh no, it still gets super hot in the summertime. We still had 100+ degree weather days. And thank God that we had the camper underneath shade, because otherwise we would have been roasting. Like I said, in the summertime, we were spending probably about $400 a month in gas alone, just for the generator, not including our vehicles. And so it's one of those things where you definitely want to get your RV in a place that has shade of some sort. And I would never suggest buying a blank field ever. But you definitely want to try to have some cover over your structure, whether you do, have like a little tiny home you can pull in somewhere, or a RV like we have. Let's see.
And I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable parking it where we did if we were back in Florida. I mean, we've been through a lot of hurricanes and trees fall over, and yeah, that's something you definitely have to worry about. Looking around and just observing around here in the 6 months, any trees that were down on our property that are down now, they basically were in a creek or something. And that's the only reason they like fell over, or they put in ditches and there's a tree in the middle of it. So it ended up falling over. Our ground here is, straight up clay with rocks all through it. So, oak trees and hickories that are around our camper right now providing shade. I'm really not worried about them falling over because they are anchored. Like, I don't think they're going anywhere. Yeah. So, we just haven't had the need to put in a pole barn. I mean, it's a good concept. It makes energy a lot lower, but it's just not necessary where we are.
And it's also one of those things, too. It's a constant kind of like push and pull here, because we did start with nothing on the property, is what is a priority for you? And I mean, we're not coming into this with like unlimited funds or anything like that. And it's one of those things, it's like, what is our priority for our finances? And like we said earlier, we did make the mistake of not getting electricity hooked up sooner because we were spending $400 a month in gas. But it's one of those things is rock in our driveway so we can actually drive up our driveway more important than having, some extra shade for our RV? Or is having the electric hooked up more important? There's a whole bunch of things you have to think about when you're starting from basically nothing, of what's most important to you and what has to be done ahead of time. And so it's one of those things you have to think about the fact that you're going to have different things and different priorities and different things that need to be done, and different aspects that have to be taken care of at different times. So you really have to prioritize what you're doing and making sure that everything's taken care of. Guys, sorry, we got a spammer on here. Put user in. Hold on a sec.
I guess we've made it.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a spammer. That's awesome. Look at that. All right.
Yeah, continue on.
So that was fun. I didn't know my little old channel could get a spammer. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, so animal cover. We do everything mobile. With all our animals, we have mobile coverings, mobile shade structures, everything like that. And I'll let him kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've always, over the years, like we said, since 2014, had animals. I've always kind of gone on the mindset of making everything mobile, because anytime you do permanent structure, well, then your animals are always messing and going to the bathroom in the same spot. And I don't know about you, but I don't really like shoveling cow and sheep and chicken poop. So I've always made everything movable, even if it's kind of a pain to move. It still would be good every month or so to be able to move it, or every week. But if you go to my channel, Cracker Turn Torah, I actually have a video on our latest iteration of our mobile sheep structure, and it's really simple, not that expensive, and that's basically all we've used. It's cattle panels, top rail, and a couple of tarps, and that's it. And I even made it to where we can anchor it into the ground, because those crazy winds in Oklahoma, and I actually never even anchor it because we've gone through
multiple storms with really high winds,
and it doesn't
totally
move.
Fine.
Yeah, it's so close to the ground, it's not a problem. So knock on wood, we'll have a storm tomorrow or something. I don't blow it to the next county.
Yeah, and that's something we've had 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts here during storms and things like that. And it's one of those things you have to. And I mean, even like with him, he'll turn the shade structure depending on like how the wind's blowing that day, or things like that. So it's one of those things where having mobile shade structures or mobile pens that you can have your animals in is a really good thing, because you also don't have to worry about that area dying from having constant shade. So we do regenerative agriculture. Sorry, I say sustainable agriculture and it gets annoyed with me, but we do regenerative agriculture. So we are constantly moving our sheep to different paddocks, usually every couple days, depending on how tall the grass is and whatnot. So we would put in one permanent shade structure in a spot wouldn't even work for us, because our sheep are won't be in the same spot for months. So it wouldn't make sense to have it in the same spot anyways. And
another benefit to having the mobile shade structure, that you can choose where they're going to put more fertility in the field. If you have a spot that's kind of crummy and you're like, yeah, that needs some extra fertilizer, you just put the shade structure there, and now for those 3 days that they're in that paddock, they're going to go to the bathroom there more often, because sheep, when they lay down for a while and they get up, they automatically go to the bathroom. So that it's just another tool in the chest.
Yeah. More animals, absolutely. We do plan on getting more animals, and it's one of those things where I've said in videos before, you definitely have to do your research ahead of time based on what kind of animals you're getting. Even chickens, you can kill chickens so easily. So it's one of those things. Definitely do your research on the kind of animals you want to have. For us, we started out with sheep. We actually got sheep before we had chickens. So we started out with sheep because basically they were smaller, easier to manage.
If we messed up and killed one, it's just one sheep. It's not a
giant
1,000-pound cattle or cow that costs us tons of money.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, sheep just made a lot of sense. So we did have had sheep, like I said, since 2014. So we do plan on getting more sheep. We actually plan on getting more sheep to help increase the numbers in our flock. We currently have
14.
Yeah, we have 14 in our flock right now. And then we plan on getting chickens, ducks, cattle, probably zebu.
Rabbits.
Yeah, we have rabbits already. Our rabbits, I'm not going to say that because that's my next video for tomorrow. But we have rabbits, we have sheep right now. We do plan on getting chickens, ducks, cattle.
And one thing to consider is look at the property that you're on, and some properties are just better for certain types of animals. Like I grew up with, some goats, and goats are kind of a pain in the butt. Some people like them, but compared to sheep, they're a pain. There's a reason in the Bible that there's parts where God's going to separate the goats from the sheep. Yeah, because goats are a pain in the butt. So our property, we have, half of it roughly is woods, and we want to clear it out to silvopasture. And there's a lot of the trees that we'd be cutting down that our goats won't eat, or our sheep won't eat. So we actually do plan on getting goats, even though I don't really care for goats that much. But, I'd rather convert all those trees that we're going to cut down to turn into grassland into meat. So at least for a time, we will be getting goats. So look at your property, look at what it is set for. If you got a bunch of ponds, then you probably should get some ducks.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We have 5 ponds. We should have ducks.
Yes.
We should have duck eggs. We should have duck, that's just kind of makes sense. Now, if we had no ponds or water on our property whatsoever, obviously we wouldn't be getting ducks. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things. And of course, if you do have questions about animals or anything like that, you can definitely ask us even offline. You can direct message my Instagram, Muck, Boots, and Motherhood, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And he's researched everything to death. I can promise you that. So if you have questions about anything with regenerative agriculture or any kind of animal questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them, or even refer you to the people that he used for his research. Okay, greenhouse was asked, one question about your greenhouse.